My name is Richard Lawson, and at 63 years old, I never thought I'd be responsible for putting my own daughter behind bars. I've lived through heartbreak, loss, and betrayal, but nothing could have prepared me for the day I realized that my only child, the little girl I once carried on my shoulders, wanted me dead. It started with a birthday gift. A simple brown package left neatly on my porch one quiet Thursday morning. No note from the delivery service, no knock on the door. Just my name written in that familiar, graceful handwriting I hadn't seen in years, Melissa Lawson. My daughter. For a moment, I stood there frozen. 3 years had passed since she walked out of my life, shouting that I'd never chosen her. 3 years of silence, no calls, no visits, not even a message on Christmas. So when I saw her name again, I thought maybe she was reaching out. Maybe she wanted to make peace. Inside the box was a bottle of Hennessey, her late mother's favorite brand. The glass shimmered in the sunlight, rich amber liquid swirling inside like captured fire. There was a small card attached, "Happy birthday, Dad. Thought you might like a taste of old times." My chest tightened as I read it. It was the first time she'd called me Dad in years. I smiled, even laughed a little, but the warmth didn't last long. Because Melissa knew something everyone else did, after my stroke 2 years ago, I'd sworn off alcohol for good. She knew that better than anyone. So why send it? At first, I brushed off the unease. I told myself it was just a gesture, maybe even guilt wrapped in glass and ribbon. Still, something in me hesitated. Something whispered that this wasn't the reunion I'd been praying for. I didn't know then that the gift wasn't meant to reconnect us, it was meant to bury me. Before I tell you how I found out, please subscribe to the channel. We share true stories that remind us just how thin the line between love and betrayal can be. Because that Hennessey wasn't just a birthday gift, it was a weapon. Melissa wasn't always distant. There was a time when she was my pride and joy, my reason to keep breathing after her mother, Claire, passed away. She was 16 then, strong-willed and brilliant, always saying she'd make me proud. And she did. She graduated top of her class, married young, and started her own business before she turned 30. I thought I'd done something right. Then came Daniel Green. He was charming, successful, and from a family that seemed to have everything: money, influence, status. I remember shaking his hand the day he asked for Melissa's hand. His grip was firm, confident. "I'll take care of her, sir," he said. I believed him. Their wedding was beautiful, though I couldn't help but feel like an outsider at my own daughter's celebration. Daniel's parents, Edward and Margaret Green, were gracious hosts but carried the air of people who didn't quite approve of me. I was a retired construction manager from Cincinnati. They were old money. I didn't fit their world. Melissa noticed it too, but she laughed it off, saying I worried too much. The distance started small: missed calls, forgotten holidays. Then, 3 years ago, everything shattered. Melissa came over one night, unannounced, her face pale and drawn. "Dad," she said, "I need help. Daniel's business is falling apart. We need a loan, just until things stabilize." She wanted me to co-sign a $150,000 business loan. I told her I couldn't. After my stroke, I'd sold most of my assets and lived off a modest pension. Her expression hardened instantly. "You'd help your friends before you'd help your own daughter," she spat. "That's not true, Melissa. You and Daniel need to learn to stand on your own feet," I said quietly. She slammed her hands on the table. "You'd rather see us drown than lift a finger. You've always chosen others over me." We argued for hours. Every word drove us further apart until she stood at the door, trembling with rage. "You'll regret this, Dad. One day, you'll wish you'd chosen your family." Then she left, and I didn't hear from her again. For 3 years, silence filled the spaces where laughter used to live. Birthdays came and went. Holidays passed without a call. I'd sit on the porch some evenings, watching the sunset, wondering if she was okay. I'd tell myself she was just angry, that time would soften her heart. Then came that Thursday morning. The quiet one with the brown package on my doorstep. Seeing her handwriting again felt like a miracle and a warning all at once. The neat loops of her letters, the same handwriting I'd helped her perfect as a child, brought a wave of memories, school projects, thank you cards, her first job application. It felt like a piece of the past had found its way back to me. But even then, something didn't sit right. Why Hennessey? Why now, after all this time? I'd given up drinking because of my health, she knew that. She'd been there when the doctor warned me that even a sip could strain my heart. So why send the one thing I couldn't enjoy? I wanted to believe it was her way of extending an olive branch, maybe an attempt to reconnect through nostalgia, something that reminded us of her mother. Claire used to keep a small bottle of Hennessey for special occasions. Maybe Melissa remembered that. So I placed the bottle on the kitchen counter and stared at it for a long time. It gleamed like a memory of better days. I told myself I'd call her later, thank her, maybe even ask if we could meet. But I never made that call. Because that bottle, sitting so innocently under the morning sun, would soon tear apart what little remained of my family. It would destroy trust, expose secrets, and prove that sometimes the most dangerous hands are the ones that once reached for yours in love. And it all began with that quiet Thursday morning. The package sat on my porch like it had been placed there by invisible hands, no truck engine, no footsteps, no knock. Just silence. Morning sunlight glinted off the gold lettering on the label inside the brown paper. My name was written in my daughter's familiar handwriting, neat and deliberate. I stood there for a long time before picking it up. The weight of the box felt heavier than it should have. I carried it to the kitchen table, the same one where Melissa used to do her homework while I made dinner. For a moment, the memory softened me. Maybe this really was her way of saying she wanted to start over. The paper came off smoothly, the tape cleanly cut, almost as if whoever packed it had done it with precision. Inside, nestled in tissue paper, was a bottle of Hennessey XO. The kind that costs more than I'd ever spend on myself. The glass shimmered like amber fire, the liquid inside catching the light like melted gold. There was a card taped to the neck, "Happy birthday, Dad. Thought you'd enjoy something smooth for once." Her humor, dry and cutting, still lived in those few words. I couldn't help but smile, even if it hurt. But then came the unease. Melissa knew about my health. After the stroke, my doctor had been clear, no alcohol, not even a sip. She knew it, she'd cried beside my hospital bed while promising she'd take care of me. Sending this, it didn't make sense. I lifted the bottle, turning it in my hands. The seal looked untouched, the label immaculate. Still, something about it didn't feel right. Maybe it was just the years of silence pressing on me, or the echo of her last words, "You'll regret choosing others over me." I set the bottle down and walked away, but my eyes kept drifting back to it. That warm, glowing amber, so inviting, so familiar. Claire used to pour a small glass of Hennessey on our anniversaries. She said it tasted like patience. Melissa would laugh every time, asking for a sip, pretending to be grown up. I thought maybe she remembered that. The day passed quietly. I worked in the garden, read the paper, tried not to think too much. But by afternoon, the guilt had started eating at me. I told myself it was selfish to let such an expensive bottle sit unopened. If I couldn't drink it, someone else should enjoy it. That's when I thought of Edward Green, Daniel's father, my old neighbor and friend. He was the kind of man who appreciated fine things but never bragged about them. He'd helped me fix my fence last spring and refused to take a dime for it. I figured, maybe giving him the bottle would be a nice gesture. I wiped the dust off the glass, placed it gently in a small paper bag, and told myself it was the right thing to do. Maybe, in some twisted way, it would even honor whatever peace offering Melissa was trying to make. As I locked my door and started down the street toward Edward's house, I couldn't shake the faint chill that ran down my spine. The bottle clinked softly with every step, a rhythmic sound that almost felt alive. Looking back now, I realized that moment, carrying that bottle under the soft afternoon sun, was the exact point my life began to unravel. Because that single act of generosity would soon turn into the gravest mistake of my life. Edward was on his front porch when I arrived, rocking gently in that old wooden chair of his. The smell of freshly cut grass hung in the air, and a paperback novel rested open on his lap. When he saw the paper bag in my hand, he grinned. "Don't tell me you've finally come to share a drink, Richard," he chuckled. I held out the bottle. "Not quite. It's a birthday gift from Melissa. Hennessey XO. You appreciate this kind of thing more than I do." His eyes widened. "This is the good stuff. You sure about that?" "I'm sure," I said. "I can't touch it anymore, and it's too fine to sit on a shelf gathering dust." He stood, taking the bottle with both hands like it was a treasure. "Then I'll make a toast in your honor tonight. Margaret's working the late shift, so it'll just be me and this beauty." I laughed. "Enjoy it, Ed. You deserve it." That evening, I felt lighter. For the first time in years, it seemed Melissa had reached out and I'd done something good with it. Maybe that gift really was her way of making peace, her way of reconnecting through something familiar. I spent the rest of the night reading and almost convinced myself that everything was fine. The unease from the morning had faded, replaced by a quiet, cautious hope. I imagined calling Melissa the next day, telling her I'd gotten a package, that I'd love to talk. Maybe, just maybe, we could start again. But as the clock ticked toward midnight, the phone shattered the silence. The sound sliced through the house like a siren. I hesitated before picking up. "Richard," a trembling voice said. It was Margaret Green. "It's Edward, he's in the hospital." My chest tightened. "What? What happened?" "He collapsed about an hour ago. They said it looks like poisoning." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My eyes darted to the kitchen counter, where the Hennessey box had sat earlier. The memory of that smooth amber liquid flickered through my mind, and something cold washed over me. "Poisoning?" I repeated. "What are you talking about?" "They don't know yet," she sobbed. "He was fine during dinner. Then around 10, he said the Hennessey tasted strange." I gripped the edge of the counter, heart pounding. I had poured myself a taste of that same Hennessey before giving it to him, just one sip, to see if it was as smooth as it looked. That sip had burned sharper than I expected, bitter at the end, but I'd thought nothing of it. Now, standing in the dim kitchen, realization crept in like ice water. The gift I'd passed on to Edward hadn't been a peace offering. It had been a death sentence meant for me. And the person who sent it, my daughter, had finally kept her promise. I had chosen someone else over her. And now, she'd made sure I'd regret it. I was out the door before Margaret finished her sentence. The night air hit my face like ice as I sped toward Riverside General. Every red light felt like an eternity. When I reached the hospital, the sterile brightness of the emergency room swallowed me whole, antiseptic smell, hurried footsteps, hushed voices. Margaret was in the waiting area, her hands shaking around a cold cup of coffee. Her eyes were red and swollen. "They're trying to stabilize him," she said. "He just collapsed. The doctors think it's some kind of toxin." My stomach dropped. "A toxin? From what?" "They're running tests," she whispered. "The only thing he had tonight was that Hennessey you gave him." I froze. The sounds around me blurred, the distant beeping monitors, the murmur of nurses. I could still taste that single sip I'd taken earlier, the faint bitterness I'd ignored. I pressed my hand to my chest, half expecting my heart to seize. A doctor appeared minutes later, his face grim. "Mr. Green's condition is critical," he said. "His blood pressure is unstable. We're doing everything we can, but the symptoms suggest chemical poisoning. Do you have any idea what he might have ingested? Margaret turned to me, pleading. Richard? I swallowed hard. He drank from a bottle of Hennessey. A gift my daughter sent me. The doctor's brow furrowed. Do you still have the bottle? No, I said slowly. But I might have a small amount left in a glass at home. He nodded quickly. Bring it here immediately. And, sir, you should be examined too, if you've consumed any. The ride home was a blur. I gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles went white. My house looked different when I pulled up, quiet, tense, as if it already knew what waited inside. The shot glass still sat on the counter where I'd left it that afternoon, a thin ring of amber at the bottom catching the moonlight. My stomach twisted. That beautiful, golden liquid now looked like poison. I didn't want to believe it. Melissa couldn't have done this. She was my daughter, my only child. But then I remembered her last words, "You'll regret choosing them over me." I poured the remaining liquid into a clean jar, sealed it, and drove straight back to the hospital. The doctor took it from me without a word and disappeared down the hall. I sat beside Margaret as the night dragged on, both of us waiting for a verdict neither of us wanted to hear. Around 4 a.m, a nurse approached. "Mr. Green is stable for now," she said softly. "He's lucky. A little more, and he wouldn't have made it." Lucky. That word echoed in my mind as the doctor returned, holding the jar. "We'll need to send this to the lab for confirmation," he said, "but the initial tests show traces of a potent organic compound, something you don't find in alcohol." I felt my throat close. "You mean poison?" He nodded grimly. "Yes. Whoever prepared that bottle knew what they were doing." Margaret covered her mouth, sobbing quietly. I couldn't move. My mind spun back to that morning, the neat handwriting, the careful wrapping, the too-perfect seal. It all fit together now. The gift hadn't been a mistake. It was deliberate. I thought of Melissa's laughter as a child, the way she'd hold my hand on walks, the look on her face when I told her no that last night. I wanted to believe she'd been angry, not hateful. But this was hate dressed as love. By dawn, the police had arrived. They took the bottle, my statement, and photographs of everything. I answered their questions mechanically, my voice hollow. One of the officers asked if I suspected anyone. I couldn't bring myself to say her name, not yet. When they left, I sat alone in the waiting room, staring at my reflection in the glass door. My eyes looked foreign, tired, afraid, and filled with a truth I couldn't deny any longer. The Hennessey had been meant for me. And if I hadn't passed it to Edward, I'd have been the one fighting for my life in that hospital bed. By sunrise, the police sealed Edward's hospital room as evidence. Detective Carla Jennings introduced herself, mid-40s, calm eyes that saw through lies. She asked for my cooperation and a sample of my fingerprints to rule out cross-contamination. My hands trembled as I signed the consent form. "Mr. Lawson," she said, "you mentioned the bottle came from your daughter." I hesitated. Saying it out loud made it too real. "Yes. Melissa Lawson. She sent it as a birthday gift." Jennings studied me carefully. "Do you believe she meant you harm?" I don't know," I stammered. "But she knew I couldn't drink." "She knew." She nodded slowly. "Then we start there." The evidence team collected the glass, packaging, and my daughter's note. Every detail felt like a nail being driven deeper into something I didn't want buried. When they left, I sat in silence, replaying every moment since the package arrived. The handwriting, the seal, even the faint chemical tang I'd ignored, it all made sense now. That afternoon, Detective Jennings called with preliminary results. The toxicology screen shows a derivative of ricin, very pure, very deliberate. Whoever did this has knowledge of chemistry. I gripped the phone. Ricin? That's a weapon. Yes, she said. And not something you buy by accident. Do you know anyone with access to that kind of substance? Her question sank into the pit of my stomach. Melissa's husband, Daniel, worked in pharmaceutical supply. I told the detective everything. His connections, the company name, their ongoing financial struggles. Jennings listened, typing quickly. We'll trace the source of the package and the sender's credit trail. Sit tight, Mr. Lawson. Don't contact your daughter yet. But sitting tight wasn't an option. I drove to my old friend Dr. Henry Miles, a retired chemist who sometimes assisted local authorities. I handed him the printout of the lab report. Tell me if there's any chance this could be a mistake. He examined the data under a magnifier, his face tightening. This isn't a mistake, Rich. It's precise work, concentrated, filtered. Whoever mixed it wanted someone dead. I felt my throat dry out. Could it have been tampered with after shipping? He shook his head. Impossible. The seal was factory perfect. The poison was introduced during bottling or before packaging. Meaning the sender controlled every step. I sat there, staring at the floor, my pulse thudding in my ears. She wouldn't do this, I whispered. Not my Melissa. Henry placed a hand on my shoulder. You need to face the facts. Love doesn't cancel evidence. When I returned home, Detective Jennings' car was parked outside. She stepped out holding a folder. We traced the delivery, she said. The order was placed online, paid for with a card registered to a company Melissa owns, L&M Design Studio. My knees almost gave out. That's her business. She must have, maybe someone hacked her account. Jennings didn't answer. She opened the folder. Inside were screenshots of the shipping receipt, address confirmation, and a signature that matched Melissa's handwriting exactly. She watched my face carefully. I know this is hard, but we need to bring her in for questioning. Do you know where she lives now? I nodded weakly. Columbus. 221, Oak Ridge Lane. Jennings closed the folder. We'll handle it from here. For your safety, avoid contact. That night I couldn't sleep. Every creak in the house felt like guilt knocking on my conscience. I kept seeing Edward's pale face, the 4 lines snaking from his arms. If I'd drunk that glass myself, Margaret would be the one sitting in a hospital corridor right now. Around midnight, my phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. You should have enjoyed the gift yourself, Dad. I stared at the screen until the letters blurred. My body went cold. I forwarded the message to Jennings, who called within minutes. We'll trace it, she said. Don't respond. Her voice steadied me, but only slightly. Because deep down, I knew the truth, Melissa had kept her word. She'd once told me I'd regret choosing others over her. Now, through poison and silence, she was proving just how far she'd go to make sure I did. And as dawn crept over the horizon, I realized this wasn't just revenge, it was war, carefully planned by the daughter I thought I knew. 2 days later, Detective Jennings called. Her tone was sharp but controlled. We located your daughter in Columbus. We'd like you to stay available in case she contacts you. That same evening, as if on cue, my phone rang. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize, but the city matched hers. My chest tightened as I answered. Dad, Melissa's voice came through, calm and detached. I heard about Edward. Tragic. Her tone was wrong, no warmth, no shock, just a flat observation. What do you mean, tragic? I asked carefully. I saw the news online. Food poisoning, right? Terrible what bad liquor can do. Every syllable sliced like glass. You mean the Hennessey you sent me? A pause. Then a soft, calculated laugh. Oh, so you got it. I wasn't sure you would. Did you enjoy it? My throat went dry. Edward did. Silence. Long enough that I could hear my own heartbeat. Then, with quiet precision, she said, "Well, that's unfortunate." That one word, unfortunate, told me everything. She knew. She'd known who drank it, who ended up in the hospital. My grip on the phone tightened. Detective Jennings, sitting across from me with a recorder running, nodded for me to keep her talking. "Melissa," I said, forcing steadiness into my voice, "why would you send me that? Why now?" Her voice hardened. "Because you owe me, Dad. You chose everyone but me. You chose your friends, your principles, your pride. Do you have any idea what it's like watching your husband's family look down on you while your own father turns his back?" I swallowed hard. "You wanted to punish me? By killing me?" "I wanted you to understand," she snapped. "To feel what it's like to lose everything because of someone else's choice. You lost nothing when I left. You kept living like I didn't matter." "That's not true," I said, my voice cracking. "You're my daughter. You always mattered. Then why wasn't I enough?" Those words hit like a hammer. She sounded both furious and broken, a storm of pain that had been festering for years. "Melissa, listen to me," I said softly. "Whatever you think I did, this isn't the way to fix it. You almost killed a good man. Edward's in the ICU because of that bottle." Her breath caught slightly, but the calm returned. "He wasn't supposed to touch it. You were. You always gave everything meant for me to someone else. Looks like you finally stayed consistent." My heart felt like it stopped. "How do you even know I gave it to him?" Another pause. Then, quietly, she said, "Because I watched." Jennings' eyes widened. She scribbled a note and mouthed, "Keep going." "You were watching me?" I asked. "From the car across the street," she said, voice steady. "You handed it to him around 4. I almost laughed. I knew you'd find someone to pass me off to." "Melissa, please. Where are you now?" "I'm where you left me, outside your life. Don't worry, though. I've learned to finish what I start." The line clicked dead. Jennings immediately traced the number. "Burner phone," she muttered. "No name, no GPS ping." I sat frozen, the phone still in my hand. The daughter I'd raised to be kind and clever had turned her pain into something monstrous. I didn't know whether to cry or scream. Jennings leaned forward. "Mr. Lawson, based on what she just said, we have probable cause. We'll issue a warrant. But you need to stay somewhere safe. She may try again." I nodded numbly. "She wouldn't hurt me twice," I whispered, though even I didn't believe it. That night, sleep was impossible. I replayed every moment of her childhood, her first piano recital, her laughter when we went fishing, the way she hugged me after her mother's funeral. That little girl couldn't be the same person who planned this. And yet she was. At dawn, Jennings called again. "We traced surveillance footage from your neighborhood. A dark blue sedan parked across your house the day of the delivery, registered to Daniel Green." Daniel. Her husband. Jennings continued, "He claims he loaned the car to Melissa that day. We're bringing them both in." Hours later, I sat in the police station's gray interview room, the hum of fluorescent lights filling the silence. Through the glass, I saw Melissa being led in, her wrists cuffed, her expression calm. She looked straight at me, unblinking. "Mr. Lawson," Jennings said quietly, "you don't have to stay for questioning." "I do," I replied. "If she's going to speak, I need to hear it." Melissa was seated across from the detective. When asked if she understood the charges, she nodded without hesitation. "Attempted murder," Jennings said. "Do you deny sending your father the poison bottle?" Melissa smiled faintly. "I sent him a birthday gift. What he did with it isn't my fault." Her voice was eerily similar to how her mother used to sound when hiding pain behind grace. Jennings pressed. You admitted on the call that you watched him deliver it to Mr. Green. I said I watched, she replied smoothly. I never said from where. Her eyes flicked to mine. For a split second, something human broke through, the glimmer of regret, but it vanished just as quickly. Jennings ended the interrogation. Melissa was escorted away. As I watched her disappear down the corridor, handcuffed and silent, my knees went weak. It hit me that love can survive betrayal, disappointment, and distance, but it can't survive intent to kill. And for the first time, I understood what true heartbreak really felt like. 3 days after the arrest, Detective Jennings called me back to the precinct. Her voice was firm but cautious. We executed a search warrant at your daughter's home this morning, she said. You'll want to sit down before I tell you what we found. When I arrived, she laid several photographs on the table. The first showed a small workspace, glass jars, syringes, and metal trays lined up with military precision. Another photo displayed an open notebook filled with calculations and chemical formulas written in Melissa's looping handwriting. She was making it herself? I asked, barely able to breathe. Jennings nodded. We confirmed ricin production. The seeds were ground, filtered, and dried. She'd been experimenting for weeks. There are time-stamped videos on her laptop, tutorials, research notes, even testing samples on small animals. My stomach turned. I stared at the photos, unable to reconcile them with the smiling little girl in my memories. Why? I whispered. Jennings handed me another photo, one of a letter, written in ink so dark it looked like anger itself. We found this sealed envelope addressed to you, hidden inside her desk. She read aloud. Dad, I told you I'd make you see. You made me invisible. You made me small. Now you'll remember me forever. What you taught me about consequences, I'm only returning the lesson. My chest tightened. The words blurred as tears burned my eyes. Jennings continued, she also left digital messages to an accomplice listed only as D. We believe that's her husband, Daniel. He's cooperating now, says he had no idea what she was planning. But his accounts show he purchased several of the materials. She dragged him into this, I muttered. Jennings shook her head. Maybe. Or maybe he enabled it. Either way, the evidence is clear, she wasn't improvising. She built this step by step. I pressed my palms against my forehead, trying to keep from collapsing. She meant it for me. Edward was never supposed to drink it. That's right, Jennings said. We found a second plan, labeled Phase 2, Direct Delivery. It detailed breaking into your house the following weekend to finish what the first dose couldn't. My hands went cold. She was going to try again. Jennings nodded gravely. We also found surveillance photos of your home taken from her car. Dozens of them, time-stamped, catalogued. She'd been watching you for months. I stared at the evidence box in front of me, filled with the fragments of her obsession. She wanted me to see it, I said quietly. She wanted me to know she'd thought it through. Jennings sighed. She's admitted partial responsibility but shows no remorse. She says you forced her hand. Those words echoed inside me like an old wound reopening. I'd heard them before, the night she left, screaming that I'd regret choosing others over her. And now, sitting under the harsh fluorescent lights, I realized she'd spent 3 years making sure I did. I thought about Edward, still recovering in the hospital, his wife sitting faithfully at his side. He'd almost died because of me, because I'd trusted a gesture that was never meant to heal anything. When I left the precinct, the autumn air felt thin and sharp. My house, once a place of quiet comfort, now seemed hostile. I couldn't look at the front porch without picturing that brown box waiting for me. Later that night, Jennings called again. One more thing, she said. Your daughter kept detailed notes about her motive. She wrote that she wanted to erase the man who erased her. I sat in silence. There was nothing left to say. After she hung up, I stood in my kitchen, staring at the empty space where the bottle had sat. The memory of its glimmering amber hue felt cruel now, like beauty disguising death. I poured myself a glass of water and raised it, my hands trembling. "To you, Melissa," I whispered. "To the daughter I lost long before this." The truth was brutal but undeniable. She hadn't been poisoned by hatred overnight, it had been brewing quietly, fed by pride, resentment, and the kind of pain that festers when love turns inward. The next morning, I signed the papers authorizing prosecution. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. Because justice doesn't heal the heart, it just prevents it from breaking someone else's. The courthouse smelled of old wood and dusted sunlight. The kind of place where truth and regret echo off the same walls. It was a Monday morning in October when the trial began. I sat behind the prosecutor's table, dressed in the same navy suit I'd worn to Claire's funeral. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. Melissa entered through the side door, wearing a pale gray blouse, her wrists cuffed in front of her. She looked thinner, her once bright hair pulled back tight. When our eyes met, she didn't look away. There was no anger now, no guilt, just distance, like she was staring through me instead of at me. The prosecution opened with quiet precision. District Attorney Samuel Price, a man whose calm voice carried weight, addressed the jury. "Ladies and gentlemen, this case is about a daughter who tried to kill her father, not in a moment of rage, but with deliberate planning and intent. You will see evidence of a long pattern of resentment that ended with a bottle of Hennessey laced with poison." He laid out every detail, the package, the lab results, the digital trail, the handwritten notes. I felt each word like a hammer to the chest. Melissa's defense attorney, Paul Green, a distant cousin of Daniel's, countered with a smooth, sympathetic tone. "My client is not a killer," he said. "She's a wounded woman, driven by emotional trauma, by years of neglect and unhealed grief. What the prosecution calls intent, we call desperation." He turned to the jury, eyes glistening. "This isn't a crime story, it's a family tragedy." The first witness was Detective Jennings. Calm and factual, she detailed the investigation, explaining how the poison was traced, how Melissa had monitored my house, how the order had been placed through her business account. The jury listened intently, some shaking their heads in disbelief. Next came Dr. Henry Miles, who confirmed the purity of the ricin. "This was not accidental contamination," he said. "It was methodical, precise, and lethal." Then it was my turn. Walking to the stand felt like walking into a storm I couldn't escape. My palms were slick, my throat dry. The prosecutor guided me gently through the timeline, my birthday, the package, Edward's collapse, and the night I realized my daughter wanted me gone. When he asked how I felt seeing her there, I hesitated. "I feel like I failed her," I said. Somewhere along the way, love turned into something neither of us recognized. I thought distance would cool her anger. I never imagined it would feed it. The courtroom went silent. Then came the cross-examination. Green rose slowly, his voice calm but sharp. "Mr. Lawson, you admit you and your daughter were estranged?" "Yes." "And that you refused to help her financially when she asked?" "I did what I thought was right." "So, in a sense, you abandoned her when she needed you most." "I didn't abandon her," I said, forcing the words out. "I tried to teach her responsibility." He stepped closer. "Or pride, perhaps. The kind of pride that leaves scars." I clenched my jaw. "The kind that saves lives." He paced before the jury. "You also admit you gave the bottle to another man, your daughter's father-in-law, correct?" "Yes." "So, the man nearly died not because of my client's actions, but because you chose to hand over something meant for you?" The room shifted. I could feel the jury's eyes on me. "Mr. Green," the judge interjected, "let's keep this line relevant." But he wasn't finished. "One last question, Mr. Lawson. You said you felt your daughter reaching out through this gift. Is it possible, just possible, that this was her way of reconnecting, and that this tragedy was nothing more than a terrible misunderstanding? I met his gaze. Misunderstanding doesn't involve poison recipes and floor plans of my house. She wanted me dead. He paused, nodded slightly, and sat down. After 3 days of testimony, closing arguments began. Price's final statement was clear and piercing. Forgiveness has a place in the human heart, but justice has its place in the law. Melissa Lawson may have been a daughter once, but she became something else when she turned her father's love into a weapon. When Green spoke, his words were softer, almost pleading. She's not evil. She's broken. Punish her, yes, but don't bury her alive. She needs help, not hatred. The jury deliberated for nearly 7 hours. I sat in the hallway the entire time, staring at the courtroom doors, hearing the tick of the clock like a heartbeat. When they returned, the forewoman, a middle-aged woman with tired eyes, stood and read the verdict. On the charge of attempted murder in the first degree, we find the defendant, Melissa Lawson, guilty. The air left my lungs. Melissa didn't flinch. She just stared straight ahead, lips pressed tight. Judge Haynes sentenced her to 25 years in prison, with no possibility of parole for 15. When the gavel fell, it sounded like a door closing forever. As the bailiff took her away, Melissa finally turned to look at me. Her voice carried across the silent courtroom. You destroyed this family. I wanted to shout that she was wrong, that she'd done this, not me. But the words never came. Instead, I just watched her disappear behind the heavy door, the sound of chains clinking faintly as it shut. Outside, the world looked the same, blue sky, passing cars, people laughing on the courthouse steps, but everything inside me had changed. Justice had been served. But there's no verdict for heartbreak. And as I walked to my car, I realized that surviving your own child's hatred isn't victory. It's a life sentence of its own. 6 months after the verdict, life settled into an uneasy quiet. The house felt both familiar and foreign, like a photograph slightly out of focus. The neighbors stopped asking questions. The reporters stopped calling. But the silence left behind was heavier than the noise ever was. Edward made a full recovery. He visited one afternoon, walking slower but smiling like he used to. Margaret brought homemade pie, though none of us touched the bottle of wine she'd packed by habit. We sat on the porch, watching the sun sink over the same street where Melissa had learned to ride her bike. You did the right thing, Richard, Edward said softly. You saved more lives than you'll ever know. I nodded, though the words didn't feel like comfort. It doesn't feel like saving, I admitted. It feels like burying a part of myself. That night, when they left, I walked into the living room. On the mantel sat a framed photo of Melissa at her college graduation, smiling, proud, alive. I stared at it for a long time. The following morning, a letter arrived in the mail, stamped with the seal of the Ohio State Penitentiary. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside was a single sheet of lined paper, her handwriting sharp but uneven. You should have drunk it yourself. I read it twice, then dropped it into the fireplace. The paper curled, blackened, and vanished. Some messages don't deserve to be remembered. In the weeks that followed, small things began to change. I installed new locks, replaced the porch light, even bought a security system I didn't really need. It wasn't fear, it was habit. I'd learned that the people who know you best are the ones who know where to strike. Sometimes I catch myself glancing at the driveway, half expecting her to appear. I imagine her walking up, holding out her arms, saying she's sorry. Then I remember the glass bottle, the bitterness on my tongue, and the hospital machines beeping in the dark. Melissa's husband, Daniel, filed for divorce before the trial ended. He left the state with their son. I can't blame him. Still, there's a quiet ache knowing there's a grandchild I'll probably never meet. Detective Jennings called once in late spring to tell me the appeal had been denied. She'll serve her full sentence, she said. You can rest easier now. Rest. The word sounded strange. I thanked her and hung up, staring out the window. There is no rest after something like this, only acceptance. Sometimes, late at night, I replay every choice that led here. The fight over the loan, the silence, the package on my porch. If I'd called her that morning instead of opening it, would anything have changed? Maybe not. Maybe some storms start long before the thunder reaches you. I've learned that forgiveness isn't about freeing the other person, it's about surviving yourself. I can't forgive what she did, but I can grieve the daughter she used to be. One evening, as the sun dipped low, I sat on the porch with a cup of coffee. A young couple walked by, holding hands and laughing. For a moment, I smiled too. Life continues, even after the worst of it. The world hasn't ended. It just feels smaller now. People still ask if I regret turning her in. The answer never changes. I regret raising a daughter who made it necessary. Because love, when twisted by pride and pain, can become something dangerous. Family bonds are sacred, but they have limits. When love turns into manipulation and trust becomes a weapon, protecting yourself isn't betrayal, it's survival. If this story moved you, subscribe to the channel. We share real stories that remind us love can heal, but it can also blind. Sometimes the hardest truth to face is that blood doesn't guarantee loyalty. And sometimes, the most dangerous poison is the one that comes in the shape of a gift.